So good morning to everybody. I'm very pleased to start with webinar in the frame of Resilience for Dairy project. And today will be webinar about resilience of the Luxembourgish dairy sector. As you can see from the invitation and the program, Jeff and his colleagues, project team from Lice Technic Agriculture and also from the Convis, will present dairy sector in Luxembourg. Then they will continue with main needs of the dairy sector in Luxembourg. And on the end, in the last part, they will present best practices, solutions, and colleague from Convis will present sustainability tool of Convis. And as you know, Convis is advisory organization of Luxembourg. They are also responsible for milk recording. So I am very pleased to give place to our colleagues from Luxembourg. Probably Jeff will be first one, and then other colleagues will continue. So Jeff, please. I also ask participants that you can put questions in the chat, or we will make a general discussion on the end. So you can also ask directly, and during the webinar you have possibility to put questions in the chat. Jeff, please.
Thank you, Maria. So have a nice welcome from Luxembourg. I just want to inform you also that we are recording the webinar. So we will put it on our website after, for the people who missed this webinar. So today we wanted to show you, together with Caroline and Cheryl, a bit more about the dairy sector in Luxembourg, and especially about the resilience, or how we analyzed it in the project of R4D in terms of shocks and stresses, what the sector in Luxembourg is facing. So we will first have a look to the sector in Luxembourg, about some figures, and also about the actual agriculture policy. Then Caroline will present our pilot farms to get a bit an idea about what the farms are facing, what challenges or what they are looking for. We will look to the inventory of needs and solutions we did during this year in the frame of the project R4D. And then we are pleased to have Cheryl Tirify from Convis with us to show you one of the solutions we proposed in the project. So if we look to Luxembourg, Luxembourg is a very small country, only 2,500 square kilometers in the center of Europe. We have a small population, around 650,000 people, but the figure, what is more important or more interesting, that we still have an increase of population by 2% per year. So I put the picture of the construction sector. We are using a lot of land now to build, because the population is still increasing. The country is in full development. And the population is, of course, increasing by foreigners, people coming to live in Luxembourg. We are not doing everything with birth ourselves. And this means that we have a very high competition for land. In view of the agriculture is important, because we have to construct houses, we have economic development and infrastructure. Luxembourg is a country where incomes are very high. I put, for example, the minimum monthly gross wage is around 2,600 euros. So if you employ somebody to work for you, this is the minimum you have to pay. Yes, if we look to, we are still a very rural country, because 85% of the area is agricultural area of wood, and mainly half of the area is agricultural area. The rest is then for built-up area and for infrastructure. We are a small country, as I explained, but we have a lot of diversity, which has an impact on the farms. We have already if we just look to the rainfall, we have a gradient from the west to the east, the same with the temperature. And this is quite making, if we would visit now farms in Luxembourg, we would have differences, especially in intensity from the west to the east, explained by the rainfall. And then we have also a lot of different soils in this small country. So it is not easy to say, okay, now we are on sandy soils, it is like this. Farms have a lot of types of soils, which makes a very high diversity of farms in the point of the agricultural management. We have 1,800 or 1,800 farms in Luxembourg with 1,000 full-time farmers. The agricultural area is around 130,000 hectares, and 50% of this area are grassland. And so the utilization by beef, especially milk and meat production, is very high. It's this 50% of grassland which is quite defining the agriculture system in Luxembourg. The overall intensity of animals is around 1.2 livestock units per hectare. After we will have a look more on the dairy farms, and agriculture is not very important in terms of added value. It's only 0.3 of the added value of Luxembourg, which is generated by agriculture. Now, if we look what we are producing, we already see that in terms of value, milk is the most important production in Luxembourg by 32%. Then we have beef and animals, which also are milk animals. So the milk sector is really doing the highest added value in Luxembourgish agriculture. Plant production is counting around 22%, and then some wine in the eastern part of the country. And we can in fact see that dairy sector has have an important evolution the last year. So here, if we talk about agriculture, often it's about milk production. Today we have 600 farms in Luxembourg, dairy farms, and the production is around 700,000 kilograms per farm. If we look back 10 years ago, I had the figures yesterday, we were around 350,000 kilograms per farm. So quite a high increase in 10 years. And if we look now to the milk production, evolution of the last 30 years, we saw a bit an increase in the beginning of the 18th. Then the milk quota restricted the production, and we really can see that in terms of when the milk quota failed or were abolished, milk production now increased by 25%. Already at times of milk quota, we always had very high prices of milk quota, so there was a pressure to produce milk in the country. How this milk production increase is done. The milk yield per cow is increasing. You can see it here. We are constantly increasing this. But of course, the number of dairy cows now is again increasing also since 2013 as a consequence of the milk quota abolition. Milk cows increase, beef cows are reduced, but overall the number of cows dairy cows is increasing more than the reduction of beef cows. In dairy farms, I asked Charles today for their figures, because we do not have a figure of the national figure. Dairy farms have a charge, an intensity of 1.6 livestock units per hectare. So they are more intensive, of course, than the beef and the rest of the farms. What is the main feeding diet? It's a typical indoor system with grass silage, maize silage, and concentrates. Farms are also doing pasture, but it's often part-time pasture, half a day. it's not a grass, it's not a pasture system, like for example in Ireland. Now, if we look to policy, how this milk increase how it came to the milk increase. It's because we had a very positive investment frame till today, we would say. There was the quota abolition. We had very high investment grants, so public money to encourage investments in infrastructure. If you look to the pictures, you can see that a lot of buildings are new for milk production. And then we have a strong milk industry, which is asking still today for more milk, with three milk dairy factories. Then of course this allows to have know-how around the milk production. This evolution already the last 20 years, there's a big know-how. And so this explains the large increase in milk production. And also, if we look to investment grants, the high automation in milk production. I do not have the figure in mind, but I think more than 50% of farms now are milking with milking robots, for example. Now, what is happening? The increase will not continue like this, because now we are really facing environmental regulations which will limit the milk production in Luxembourg. Mainly environmental targets, for example, ammonia emissions, which we are not able to reduce at this moment, greenhouse gas emissions, and then we have most of water bodies, water bodies outside, which are not in a good conditions. If you look to the statistics, it's moderate or bad conditions. And then, of course, a lot of nature protection areas are defined in order to increase biodiversity. These four environmental regulations are really now limiting the milk production in the country. For example, if we look to ammonia emissions, here we show the ammonia emissions, the total ammonia emissions of the agriculture in Luxembourg, and 2005 is the reference year, and we have to reduce the emissions to this level, to the red level I showed. So it's minus 22% in reference to 2005. And what we see is that they go in the wrong direction. In fact, they are increasing due to the intensification and the increase of the milk production. So we are not. We have to turn the curve. We are not on the right curve about ammonia emission, and this is quite a very high challenge now for the sector in Luxembourg. Now, very actual propositions. Policy propositions the agriculture policy makes in order to reach the goals, and quite a lot of discussions, of course, in the sector. But the Ministry of Agriculture has proposed that from next year on, he will allow or not herd increases in dairy farms. So if you want to do a project of a new barn, for example, you want to develop your milk production, there is an additional authorization to ask. Before it was just a question of nature integration, of being able to have a permit to build. And there will be a limitation in cattle production. It's defined by working units, but it is around 150 dairy cows plus the young stock. So there will be no authorization of more milk production if you have a size of 150 dairy cows. This is a proposition now which is very strong, and where they hope just to reduce the ammonia emissions by reducing the number of cows. There are new supporting programs. I think it's the same than in other countries. For example, for slurry management till 2024, all the outside storages have to be covered, and all the slurry needs to be injected or at least put on the soil directly during the next years. There are programs for reduction of fertilization. These are agri-environmental programs which should help to reduce the impact on water, for example. There are programs to encourage reduction of livestock. And then there is also programs, for example, to encourage pasture of dairy cows, young stock and beef cows, to have again cows outside. These are examples what politics or what policy is trying to do in Luxembourg. I will now go over to Caroline. We wanted to show you our 7 pilot farms to well understand how they are working and to see a bit the diversity of the farms. So Caroline.
Yes, good morning everyone. I will quickly present you our pilot farms. In total they are 7, and as you can see on the map, I make the green markings. They are all spread throughout the country, so yeah, we have 1 farm in each region. In the next slide I made a table, so you have a quick overview with the main features of each farm. You can see that we have conventional farms. We also paid attention to ask 1 organic farm at least. Number of hectares, grassland and arable land. Yeah, the bigger farms have also more hectares than smaller farms. Number of cows. We have farms with 350 cows now, and we have smaller ones. For the milk production, we have also more intensive and less intensive farms. Milking robot, almost everyone, with the exception of 2 farms who don't have milking robot yet. And for diversification, we have a lot of farms that don't pay attention only on the dairy sector, but also developed on other sectors as the potatoes or direct marketing, vegetables. We also have 2 farms with what are pedagogical farms. Yeah, just to have an overview of the 7 farms. Next slide. Yeah, now I will just present each farm, just present the SWOT analysis and mention the needs or interest that the farm told us. For the first farm, that's our biggest farm, who has now 5 milking robots. That's the farm with the 350 cows. Its strength is a specialization in milk production as well as the simple workflows. For the weaknesses, he only has 1 mainstay, 130 hectare in the water protected area, and live unit stocking at the maximum. For his opportunities are the food shortage, large area structure, and good cooperation with neighbor farms. What's very important. Threats, yeah, well-known price fluctuations on the world market, feed shortage during dry years, and the heavy rainfall events reduce forage quality. For the needs and interests, as he has a lot of hectares in water protected area, he's really interested in research about maize cultivation in water protection areas. And another interest or need is the grassland forage enhancement to improve protein self-sufficiency. The next one is our most known breeder in Luxembourg. His strengths are the broadly positioned risk competent staff. No, that's, yeah. He's always well organized. So you have to know that his father is still on the farm. He has a worker who is part-time on his farm, and himself, the paid worker, he's working at another institute. Weaknesses: he has little property, so much of the land is leased. His opportunities, the new construction makes it more flexible to make more cows without new investments. Threats are society and suburban issues, as well as quality of forage due to weather. His needs and interest are the optimization of forage as well as the optimization of workflows. The next one is a farm where our school is cooperating with. So his strengths, he mentioned that he's really more a cattleman, and on the farm are also classrooms and where you can organize group activities. Weaknesses is that not every arable land or farm sit is near the barn, so he has to make some distances to get his food, for example. Opportunities: yeah, you can visit the school, it's nearby. Threats are no expansion possible at that sit where he is now, and he loses some land or will lose some land because the community will build a new school. Needs and interest: yeah, he talked that he would like to plant maybe fruit trees to make, for example, apple juice with the students, just to have another idea to develop. The next one. Yes, that's the farm in the north. His strengths are really the organization. 2 weeks ago, we visited that farm with all the pilot farms. He also has many different pillars of income, not only the dairy one. Many workforces that are not workers who are there all the time, but more family members and friends who help him. Weaknesses: administrative expenses, land in 2 countries, so he has land in Luxembourg as well as in Belgium. Diversification: interest not 100% focused. As he does also potato cultivation, in that season the dairy cows have to function, and he pays more attention on the potatoes. Opportunities: he has a good location, a good soil, precipitation, as we saw before, in the north is better than in the east. He's located near the border, available land abroad, and interest in digitalization. Threats: or potato cultivation could disappear, then he has to find something else for the income. And his father will retire soon, so at that moment he has to get a worker. Needs and interest are the feeding technology, sensor technology in feeding, as well as staff management, as at this moment he doesn't have a worker and he doesn't want a worker, but at one moment he has to. And another interest is the digitalization, as already mentioned. Next one is a more, not a very intensive farm. His strengths are very low farm to field distances, high proportion of land owned by family members, and versatile interests. His weakness are the high fixed cost burden due to new investments, the attention not 100% focused on dairy cattle due to direct marketing branch. He has a vegetable market where clients can come and pick up the legumes in the field or the flowers, cut themselves and pay. Opportunities, favorable location for direct marketing is near a main street, so everyone passes in the morning and in the evening to go to work or to go home. The equipment enables easy conversion from dairy cows to just young cattle rearing, for example. He's not forced to do big investments to change from dairy cows to just young cattle rearing. Threats are increasingly large cuts due to water protection areas and liquidity bottleneck in case of prolonged low price phase. Yes. His needs and interests are sustainable management. For the feeding, it's saving resources, take the best harvest time and the whole preparation. Data preparation and cross-manufacturer compatibility is also a big need here in Luxembourg, at least. The next one is Wirtz Agri. He doesn't have a milking robot, but a milking carousel. His strengths are, that's the cheap milk making, because he did the investments years ago. So now every milk he makes, it's an income. He doesn't have to pay back his investments. And direct marketing and diversification. So that's our workload. He has a lot of work to do, also with the direct marketing. And then comes the needs and interest is more efficient workflows to have less workload and more free time. And the last one is our organic farm in the south of Luxembourg. His strengths are, he has also the pedagogical farm, and he was the first farm with a milk filling station where you could buy your milk. Threats are that he's an absolute grassland site near the main city, so there's a lot of land competition. And needs and interests, his biggest interest is in mother-bound calf rearing. He already asked if in the project is any farm to visit that system. So if anyone knows a farm who is doing the mother-bound calf rearing, then just say it. That was for the 7 pilot farms. I will just mention our members of the NDA in Luxembourg that are next to the pilot farms, the main dairies. That is Luxley, Biok, and Arla, who is in Germany. Advisory services are Convis Ibla, Chamber of Agriculture, and the Ministry with the Rural Economy Service and the Administration of Technical Services in Agriculture. For education and vocational school, that's us, the LTA, the agricultural school in Luxembourg. And that's all.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. We will move to our work we did in the NDA. What's interesting in the NDA is also you can see that we do not have any university and no non-research centers. So we are really dependent on working in this kind of projects to have information from other countries. We are too small to have a university or research center. But we had very good discussions in our NDA. We had 2 meetings in 2022, where in the first meeting we tried to define the challenges of our sector, and in the second meeting we had more look to the solutions we need and we could propose in the project. We did a bit the same system, maybe like in your countries. We first put all the ideas of stresses and shocks the sector is thinking to have, and then we did a vote. And for example, here you can see the first 4 points the NDA members noted. So the first one was really the environmental impact of dairy production, as maybe with the introduction of the policy I showed already, that now this is the biggest stress the sector is really seeing and facing and wants to work on. Then we had a lot of discussion about the feeding system. The increase in milk production the last year is of course done with an increase in maize production, and with maize production you need to import protein to have a good ration, and so this is also a discussion we had, or the NDA is seeing as a real stress that the feeding system is going in a direction where you are more dependent on other parties. Society requirements, of course, with a population which is increasing, with more foreigners, there are new ideas how the sector should evaluate, and there's a gap between the society and the production, and there's a real challenge to explain what the sector is doing and also to adapt to the requirements. And then, of course, the discussion of prices with high investments. It's always a question of market prices, which are resilient. And then there were a lot of other ideas, but we will stay to this, where we also try to work. I took out the results of the survey, which was not the result of the NDA discussions, but in the survey we proposed in the project, not all countries filled in. We saw that there is an ask or a need in the technical efficiency for everything, which is detectors. You saw in the pilot farms, they want to work on that to really see, to have detectors for diseases, for example, and also for innovative silage production. This is more to produce a good grass. About animal welfare, it's a bit in the same direction, improve the welfare of the cow, reduce antibiotics, which was scored with 81%. So these are a bit more farm requirements, whereas in the NDA we saw a really sector requirements with the feeding system and the environmental impact. And for example, for economic efficiency and social resilience, the work-life balance was rated very high, still important. And you see that our pilot farms also a lot of had the question of work organization. Now about the solutions. This was in the second NDA meeting where we had a discussion. Okay, we have the three main stresses: the environmental impact, the feeding system, and the society requirements. And then we tried to define solutions which could help, which are already in place. For example, for the environmental impact, a longer crop rotation, training and advice would help to improve this impact, to have a more land-based system. But there are also things, I put them in bold, which we agreed that we not have it ready. For example, monitoring tools for environmental, but also the work about manure fermentation, manure treatment, bringing manure to reduce the impact of the manure, to make manure more plantable. And then in the feeding system, also again, crop rotation, additional forage production, things which are there, which are maybe not used, but which are known, increase feed quality. But then we had a discussion that we should develop a new revenue model which allows to create added value with higher self-sufficiency. As now on the market, it's not important. You just have to produce the milk with maize and protein you import. But if we want to have another system, there should be an added value on the market. And then the breeding goal of the dairy cows, if we want to have another feeding system, we have to adapt the genetics. Maybe with a look to what we saw in Ireland, for example, a country who also adapt the genetics to their feeding system. And about society requirements, there should be an important work to do about understanding what they are doing, also doing preventive communication and having preventive behavior. So all this should lead in a higher resilience for our sector. And then, we proposed solutions. Solutions we have not yet ready, but for the work, I think there will be in the next months in the project. There was a whole solution analysis assessment now, and there will be best practices ready. And these were the ones we proposed. We do not yet know if they will be needed for other farms. There were technical solution about pasture and milking robot, which was more management. We had some project about that. These are solutions we are ready. But we wanted to focus today on one solution. That's why Charles is with us. It is a tool which is done on the whole farm about life cycle assessment, or also about environmental assessment of farms, which should help farmers to improve the environmental impact just by having a lot of figures. And so I will give the word to Charles, who could at best explain this better than we do.
Thank you,
Charles,
Jeff.
you can take over.
I just want to try and share my screen.
I will stop sharing, so and then you can share.
Is it working?
We see now your teams.
Oh, this way. Okay.
Now it's yes.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning to everybody. My name is Charles Terrify. I'm working at Convis as an advisor for the last 8 years, and I'm just want to introduce our work to sustainable agriculture. So first of all, a few words to Convis. It's a Luxembourgish cooperative society for animal husbandry and agricultural advice. And we are divided in 4 main departments: the dairy cows, suckler cows and beefs, the pigs, our advisory service, and the commercialization of cattle and pigs, which is meanwhile in another business. We are located in Ettelbruck in the northern part of Luxembourg, and we have meanwhile around about 80 employees and 750 members, and our customer numbers is around about 1,200 customers. Our department itself, the advisory department or the advisory service, our main fields of activity are the fertilization planning, where we have more than 500 customers. This sustainability monitoring, we have a service for animal production advisory, which is mostly based on dairy cows, a small amount of beef farms as well. And then there's a water protection advisory and an increasing part of an administrative advisory service due to all the declarations the farms have to do with subsidies and so on. And the employees on the in our advisory service itself takes meanwhile 12 employees. And it is this sustainability monitoring which I want to show you today. So what are we doing? We take between 1 and 2 hours to put the raw data from the bookkeeping from our farms into our own software, and then after that we can process them and do data reporting in and create a lot of figures. And what are we sampling, or what are we reporting? We are doing nutrient balance, organic matter balance, and feedstock autarky monitoring, as well as energy balance. These were the first reportings we were doing. It all started 25 years ago, roundabout, and with these reportings, we were able to create a carbon footprint balance, a carbon dioxide balance, pronounced per hectare of the carbon dioxide balance per hectare per kilogram of milk, or with the beef farms, the carbon dioxide balance per kilogram of meat produced. And in the next slides, I will show you some of our reportings. I just excuse because they are not all in English. We didn't have the translation of all of them, and the time was very short to translate them. So these are some of the figures, some of the reports of the monitoring of the whole farm system. So as on the left, you can see the nitrogen balance with all of the inputs, and from fertilizers, from concentrate the farm buys or imports to the farm, and the outputs, in this case, plant products, so all the cash crops he sells, and the animal products he sells in form of milk and meat. And you have nitrogen balance, and it is always compared to the other farms which they do on their farm. On the right side, you see the balance of organic matter, which is imported for soil sustainability. We have also figures for phosphorus and potassium balances. And on the left donor side, you can't see my cursor, or is it? Do you see my cursor? No, I think it's quite difficult. Yeah, okay. So here are some reports of the fertilizer efficiency. So with our fertilization planning, we have a lot of information we can put into, and so we know how much mineral fertilizer the farm uses, and uses at which cultivation, and also the organic fertilizer, and so we can calculate the nitrogen efficiency on each crop, in this case the cash crops, the maize, and the permanent grasslands. To the dairy production itself, so we have a single report just for the dairy production, and every farm gets its parameters from the farm itself, the surface needed, divided in cereals, in maize, and in grasslands, the average cow number, the number of young cattle, the milk produced, and the milk produced in total, and also produced per cow, produced per hectare. And just to compare with other farms on this side, the energy corrected milk produced per hectare. On the right side, you can see some figures of the autarky, of the self-sufficiency of the farms, where we calculate the degree of self-sufficiency of the dry matter. So how much dry matter does the farm produce itself? This is the same for the energy, and two different numbers for the crude protein. And these, for example, are numbers that were developed in the Interact project Autoprot, which was quite interesting and challenging. But we found out, for example, that the difference between those two numbers are the crude protein loss on the farm itself, on the dairy production. In the middle, you can see some figures of the milk produced from forage, from own produced forage. For the farm itself, the average of 3 years of the farm itself, and the average of all the farms that are doing our monitoring. And by the way, we have between 150 and 170 farms that are doing our sustainability monitoring. The same pronounced pronounced here as relative performance from forage. And on the donor part, there are some parameters of consumption, for example, the consumption of concentrates in the farm, or the electricity, the medicaments, or the water and diesel consumption. With all this information, we can calculate the carbon dioxide balance of the dairy production, and here we pronounce it in the emissions in terms of kilogram carbon dioxide per kilogram of milk, and also in terms of the emissions per hectare of forage area. And so I will show you afterwards the differences between the classifications. It's quite interesting. And so every farm gets his own position here in this figure, and he can see how high is the emission per kilogram of milk and how high is it in the per hectare forage area. We have some brand new reports concerning the emission itself. In this case, it is divided in the carbon dioxide emissions, and every farm gets its own figures where all the emissions are divided into different groups. For example, the production means, the husband or the animal husbandry itself, the plant production on the farm itself. And so we can show every farm where the most important emissions come from, and so we can easily develop some advisory where they can put their focus on to improve their farm. The same, we have developed the same for the ammonia emissions. So with the balance of nitrogen of each farm, we can calculate where this nitrogen comes from. And so the most important thing is are nitrates that can be leached off, but also the ammonia emissions are very important, and also where politics try to improve and we have to act. And so we divide them in different sources of the ammonia emissions, and we show our farms what they can do, for example, with improving the feeding by reducing crude protein on the feeding, or for example with injection of organic matter. You can show what the farm is emitting itself and what it could be if it uses the best technique available. Last but not least, we have also an economic analysis of the dairy production, also for the beef production, but here in this case the dairy production, because ecology is quite important. But if our farms don't earn any money, they will not resist in the future. And so this is one quite important part of our work. This is what we are producing, or some of the figures we are producing for the farms, and this is also resulting in our advisory work. So we try to minimize carbon footprint, minimize the ammonia emissions, to optimize the performance. And it's important to optimize. It's not maximize performance, because maximizing milk yield is not always compatible with carbon footprint and so on. And with all the things, we try to minimize the risk of water pollution, and also optimize the milk produced from forage with minimizing concentrate needs and optimizing forage quality and so on, and also minimizing mineral fertilizer needs, and with the result of maximizing the economic result of our farm. And to finish, I just want to show you some results of our works and products. First of all, last year we got the SGS certification. So our carbon footprint tool is certified by SGS. And yeah, that's quite important for us. So, and now back again to this life cycle and assessment or carbon dioxide emissions of the farms. This figure shows the distribution of all our farms. The cross in the middle is the average mentioned here on the left side, with 1.3 kilogram of carbon dioxide per kilogram of energy corrected milk and 12 tons of carbon dioxide per hectare forage area. And here the distribution into the 4 groups. This group is, in our terms, it is the intensive group. This is the efficient group, and over here the extensive group, and this part is the middle intensive, not efficient group. And this it sounds quite complicated, but it is not. So the difference is always the carbon dioxide emissions, and we have tried to do an analysis on the economics of these groups, and what we found out is also quite interesting. The economic results differ between the different farm types. So here the efficient group, the intensive group, the extensive group, and the not efficient group. And what we can see is that the break even without the subsidies differ, and also the profit and losses. So in this was the analysis from 2019, and as you can see, the farms that produce a lot of carbon dioxide per kilogram of milk, but less carbon dioxide per hectare forage area, they produce a loss per liter of milk. And as you can see that especially the efficient ones and the intensive ones, they are in their profit above the average of all our farms. So here you can see that there are 98 farms considered at the economic results. The other ones were not very, they were not correct enough to consider in our analysis. What is always also done with our works, there are meanwhile 7 quality labels that where it is mandatory to work with our sustainability tool, which is quite, which is it's for selling their products. These are the fair milk. It's a beef label from a local supermarket. 2 labels of pig meat. Meanwhile, the fair meat and the local creamery. It's where it is not mandatory, but it's they pay for it so that the farmers can do a monitoring and help to improve, so they can help them to improve their farms. What else? We have created an own farmers award, our E award, so-called, and the E stands for ecology, economy, and efficiency. And in this award, we have a whole group of information that influence an index, and the best farms are get an award and then get paid from the ministry with an award. And so what are we considering? It's carbon footprint, the nutrients balance, and soil sustainability, animal welfare as well. It's we are getting this information from our milk recordings. And production-based indicators. That's all where we consider milk produced from ground forage, concentrate needs, electricity, and so on. And then finally also economy. So if you don't earn any money, you are not on the E award. So that's it for my part. If there are any questions, just let me know.
Thank you very much to Jeff, Caroline, and Charles. Very interesting presentation. So I'm sure that other participants have questions for you. Jeff, I ask you if you can take over discussion because I need to leave in a few minutes.
Yes.
Many thanks to your input and your very clear presentations.
Thank you, Maria. So are there questions? We delivered a lot of information, I suppose. I think there's a question in the chat. Anna, it's Maria. We tried to give an overview, I think, of what is occupying the sector at this moment in Luxembourg. Abel, you have a question.
Yes, you permit me. Just a question a little bit about the dairy sector and nature. You know, when I think about Luxembourg, I think about a beautiful country for us going uphill. I think about the city Essuur and a lot of nature. You look down from the top at us. That's another impression. Now, when Caroline presents the weak points, I thought it was very interesting, but I missed a little bit one thing. I missed nature. So how is the situation with farms and neighboring nature? Also because emissions seem to become a very important topic. And then we experience the discussion farm nature area. Is that a discussion in Luxembourg? How many meters how many kilometers you are from a nature area? And can that be a weak point or?
Yeah, I can try to respond. As I showed, there are a lot of nature protection areas which will be defined. But for example, you named the region of Essuur, which is already a nature park, how it is called, which is a water protection area. And you still have farming in this system. So you try to integrate the farming in that, but the farms have a lot of restrictions, of course. But restrictions are mainly in, maybe Cheryl knows it more exactly, in fertilizing, in rotation. There are restrictions in buildings, but it's mainly, I think, at this moment at water protection level. Cheryl, I don't know if you have
it's like this. The most restrictions are at water protection level. What concerned nature nature protection, there are a lot of voluntary services or voluntary works you can do. So with the environmental payments, and also there are some plans on Natura 2000 areas where they focus on, but it's all voluntary. But I think it's turning into mandatory.
I could make it perhaps a little bit more clear. Water protection and so on, I understand. But if emission, as Jeff told, is so important, then at least in our country, emission is completely related to the cattle sector and nature. So nature becomes the main topic, and that was my question. How important is the distance to nature, and how is that affecting the farmer and his weak points? But that's the situation as we experience it. The distance to a nature area is the all-determining factor.
Yeah, I don't know if it is a question of distance here. It is an overall question for all farms. If you are close to a nature protection area, yes, you have restrictions in keeping a number of animals. which affects some farms. You saw that the farmers, the 6 farmers or what, a lot of them were in water protection area, but the nature protection area not yet. They are planned, they are announced, but the restrictions are not yet regulated in a law. So there are some, maybe you can have a problem at this moment to build a new construction that we try to protect the area like this for example, tourism that you cannot buy everywhere. But at this moment, we have not experienced limitation in production due to that.
Okay, thank you.
It's more the pressure of or like I say, with ammonia, like number of cows or the fertilization, which is now. I think you still can come to holidays. It is still nice. We have a good. That's quite. We have a good. We are rural, but we are close to the city. We have city development, but still in the rural areas, it's a lot of rural. That is what I think you experience in Luxembourg.
Thank you.
There's a second question from Dietlinde Kwak. So please, can you? Yeah.
I put it in the chat, yeah, about the biodiversity of grasslands and pastures. It's just a very specific question. Is this an issue in Luxembourg for the farms? And if yes, how do they deal with it?
Yes. What I think that dairy farmers are intensifying their production area of grassland where they produce forage, but you need to have, for example, we have a special premium, mainly all farms take. You need, for example, to have 5% of biodiversity production, and if you have not enough hedges and things like that, you need to present grassland with high biodiversity or grassland with zero fertilization. And it's mainly in this voluntary aspect that farmers are doing, if this responds to your questions, are doing biodiversity production in grassland. So they are doing contracts to reduce, for example, fertilization, to not overseed intensive grasses in it. It's voluntary, but we also see that the part they use for forage production is quite intensive, and there is not a very high biodiversity. It's mainly ryegrass based. Charles, if you would want to add something, you are more in the advisory part.
Yeah, that's right what Jeff said, but one problem that gets bigger is that there are a lot of biotopes classified in Luxembourg. And so you have, there's a law on it, what you have to do and yet what you don't have to do. And that's quite challenging to produce good forage on extensified biotopes. And so that's quite challenging because on the one hand, farms are intensifying and on the other hand, the areas with biotopes are increasing. And that's, it's not easy to produce high quality forage.
But all this regulation, of course, put now pressure or limits the production, and it's quite also a goal of the politics because they see that we cannot fulfill the emission goals. So by putting pressure on the feed or on the beef number. It comes from all the sides, I would say, as a farmer. I think that also the maximum of the livestock units you can have in this special premium, or I just say in this grant program, is reduced from 2 now to 1.8. We have to do some areas where you don't produce. So all this is influencing the farmers. It's having an impact on the farmers.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? The chat, I don't see any. If not, I will stop the registration, the recording. We will put this online on our website. It will be on YouTube, so you can even still look it or send it to colleagues. And if you have questions, you had my email, I think, in the invitation. You can always ask to Caroline, Cheryl, or me, or to other contacts on our website. You will find it. So I thank everybody.